Hey guys, really quick, I wanted to take a second and talk about podcasting. Why? Because this medium has been the greatest thing to ever happen to me. A little over 5.5 years ago, I bought a $60 microphone and everything in my life has changed. I've gone on to build a successful business, live events, a lucrative speaking career, and I've been able to connect and become friends with some of the most influential thought leaders in the world, all because of podcasting. Now, you might not know this about me, but I've also helped multiple other people do the same thing. I usually work one-on-one with high-ticket clients to help them really build their brand. But so many people were asking me, Justin, I need to know the secret. So I've actually put together a masterclass. So if you head over to purposedrivenpodcaster.com, you can sign up for the masterclass today and learn exactly how I've been able to build this business, and you can too. This course is for wannabe podcasters and also podcasters who aren't getting the results that they want. Again, head over to purposedrivenpodcaster.com, grab your masterclass now, dive in, and take your life to the next level. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. Steven, thanks for joining me, man.
Justin, what is up, my man? Dude, I'm loving this. Our first time here, man.
Dude, I'm excited for the first time for you to be here. And, obviously we connected a couple of weeks ago. Who was it that connected us? Oh, it was Carrie Jack.
Carrie Jack. Yeah. Everybody
yeah. So Carrie introduced us and I looked into who you were. Obviously you've got massive success, right? Like the backstory of homeless to 100 million. But when we spoke, like I felt your heart. I felt how much you want to give and help others. And that's why you're here, man. And so I'm excited to dive into who you are, what you're up to, and all the good stuff. But why don't we start with who is Steven today? So introduce yourself to my audience and then we'll break down all the good stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would start with who is Steven today. Steven is hopefully a loving father, a great husband. And I'm kind of hoping that my epitaph says a man who set out to change the world and did. That's kind of what I wanted to say at the end of the journey. And the older I get, the more about service I become. Mm-hmm. I've been that stubborn kid who, okay, I got to prove myself. Okay, now I got to show off because I have to prove. Like it's crazy, kind of how the journey goes. But I think today, more than anything else, Evan Carmichael was telling me this recently. He goes, dude, I think your special thing is the fact that you take chances on people that people don't take chances on. Mm. And it turns out that they do some pretty incredible things. So I haven't got to the place where I can actually put that like into a 1-word or a 2-word thing yet. Like
I don't think you have to, man. I mean, that's just a powerful sentence.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, the reality is I am where I am today because people took a chance on me. My first mentor, Steve Myrick, who I've talked about quite a bit extensively on other shows and stuff. The chance that he gave me, I didn't even deserve. Like I had betrayed him like a year earlier and stuff like that. And the fact that I'm now here and I get to talk to you and hang out with you for a while and stuff like that. And I get to, lead teams of people and, do live events. It's to me, there's no greater purpose on life than going back and serving the person you used to be and trying to find that. Cause I asked this, it's funny story was, Lona Myrick, who was Steve's wife, when I was writing my first book back in 2014, I actually told the friend of mine who was helping me because I got dyslexia and stuff like that. So obviously writing that I do has got to be seriously edited.
Yeah.
And so I sent him to go ask, and I said, ask her this question. Ask her why, just ask her, Steven has said, why him? Why did Steve Myrick pour into me? And to the best of my ability, I didn't really see him do the same thing outside of his family. Right. And, about a week goes by, he comes back and I said, well, did you ask the question? He goes, I did. And I said, well, what'd she say? She said, well, Steve said he saw himself in you. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like your platform, my platform, any of the amazing people behind you's platform, I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'll go back and look back, and the people that we help most are the people we used to be most.
Yeah.
And Steve changed my life as a result of that. So loving father, loving husband, entrepreneur, just trying to be a life changer.
Yeah, dude. No, I love that. And it's so true. And as you were telling the story, I started thinking about like, who am I drawn to? Like, who are the types of people that I've tend to help and pour into? And it is people with not necessarily similar life stories, but you kind of see that spark in their eye, right? Like there's something different. Like I was the dreamer, right? I was the kid who had all the aspirations and none of the support, and the no shot kid. And so when I see that in individuals, I go, well, maybe I can be your shot, right? Maybe I can be the person to help you. And I only share that because I think when you're authentically helping individuals, that naturally happens, right? Like you don't even realize it until like you did that step back, and why did you help me, right? And you don't figure it out till you're able to take a step back. So let's talk a little bit about your shift, really, actually, from entrepreneurship to helping, right? Yeah. Obviously, building $100 million business, that's absolutely incredible. And you told me you're in this amazing office building with all your businesses in one building, and we can talk about that all day long, I'm sure. But I'm interested in the shift from $100 million entrepreneur, business builder, to wanting to pour into people on a higher level, writing the book, speaking, doing your own live event. What was that shift for you?
Well, I guess first of all, I want to just clarify. So it's not one business from 0 to 9 figures. It was a collaboration, a consolidation of multiple businesses that I own. That took us across the finish line a couple of times. It's dropped back a little bit since COVID, of course. We're having to rebuild some stuff, but
yeah,
for the most part, the biggest shift for me was when I woke up and I was in a really nice house. I had the sports car in the garage. I was engaged to the woman I love. It just seemed like life was like, it was like, okay, what life is great. Now what? So this is what I get to do. Like I quit doing, right. I can go to work and I'm going to continue like building my teams. I'm continuing to try to build myself so that, I had the personal development piece. I had the wanting to develop others piece. And I had this vendor that came into my office one day and they were like, what is the secret sauce behind CHE, which is one of my first businesses? What's the secret sauce behind that? I don't know. He goes, well, I'm just curious. What is it? I'm like, I don't know. I focus more on people than I do on process. Right. I focus more over here. And I realized that they all have hearts. They all have families. They all have things that they're aspiring for. They all have dreams and beliefs and all this kind of, and they all have roadblocks and struggle points and stuff that I've struggled with. And, and certain things you work on your entire life, certain things you kind of work on, you overcome, you keep moving forward. And then he made this interesting comment that I'd never heard before, but I stole it from him immediately. He says, I think I figured it out. I said, what was that? What'd you figure out? He said, I think that CHE is a personal development company masquerading as a construction company. And I was like, oh, that's deep. Yeah, I'm still on that one. That's good right there.
Yeah.
And, and it's true, right? So that's, I learned how to build myself within that business. I drove the first nail, right? They kind of went from my hands to my head to my heart. I went through that whole transition. And then again, I woke up one morning and I was like, I have essentially the American dream. I can, if my wife and I want to go and travel and go somewhere, and this is pre-COVID environment, of course, like we could go somewhere and travel. If I wanted to, take the kids down to Disneyland or whatever, we had the means to do so. We weren't wrapped up in debt. We weren't worrying how we were going to pay the next bill, and all these types of things were part of my early story. Where I had to worry about the lights getting shut off and the insects that were in the mobile home that I was in, and all these different things. And I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this. And then I got to thinking about Steve Myrick, and Steve Myrick made this comment to me one time. He said, you have to be willing to do today what others won't, so you can have tomorrow what others don't. And I was like, okay. And then after that, he said, and then you have to give it back. Then you have to give it back. So, I mean, the amazing people that you've had on your podcast, even you yourself, we've all gone through very difficult things to kind of get where we're at. I haven't met a single person yet who's incredibly successful that hasn't gone through some really hard stuff. Not one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Now, some of them don't necessarily talk about it or bring it immediately to the surface like you and I do, but they've all done it, right? Which means that if we can become the mentor that we needed 10 years earlier than we needed them, maybe we could actually affect real lasting change, right? So if I can get to Steven Scoggins at 13 years old rather than 18 years old and teach him about financial stewardship and wealth, what kind of shift would that do generationally?
Yeah.
So I think I just kind of had this epiphany that if you're going to have a meaningful life, then a meaningful life only comes by creating a legacy that outlives you. Right. I talk about Steve Myrick all the time. He was a local home builder in North Carolina. No one knows who the heck Steve is unless I talk about him. Right. But he's inside of me. Right. He created a legacy inside of me that now outlives him by me talking about him on your show.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So I think that's the shift. I think it's okay. You're super successful. Now what? Right. I'm trying to get people to understand you can start the service side even before you become super successful side, and it'll be more meaningful and more impactful. So I don't know. That's kind of a long-winded answer, but I hope it helps.
Yeah. And it is crazy because I think, and I don't know if your mindset was like this, but right when you're at your rock bottom moment, I think there's a certain mindset to go, well, this may be my rock bottom moment, but there's people that are still at a worse position in their life, and I think one of the greatest things I did, and I learned a lot from it, but, giving from a place where I didn't feel like I could give, but I still gave. Right. Mm-hmm. And the idea behind that was, let me pour into these relationships that I'm trying to have in my life. These individuals, either that I'm trying to help or individuals that I just want in my space, let me pour into them as much as I can and see what happens. And that was really the shift for me, was the realization of like giving exponentially is going to pay you back tenfold. And I'm not talking just about money, by the way. That's a byproduct of the work, right? Yeah. I'm really talking about relationships. Now, as you go and you're helping these individuals, like you said, if you could do it from a place of lack, you can certainly do it from a place of abundance as well. And it's just so true. Now, obviously, you found yourself, like you said, living in this motorhome, and now all of a sudden you're living in this dream home, right? A lot of people would be in that moment in their life, and they would go, "Oh, well, okay, I've made it," and they're going to rest in the laurels, and a lot of them, for lack of a better term, become assholes. Yeah. What was it about you that made you remember where you came from?
I wish I could say that I'm something special or something like that, but it was really the fact that I've had 3 different occasions where my stuff had me and I didn't have my stuff. Like, so, I got all the nice stuff and then lost all the nice stuff. I did that when I was 19. Steve put me in the business for myself when I was like 19 years old. I went out and made a bunch of stinking money. As a 19-year-old, now granted, and this is late 90s, like 96, 97. I went out and thought I had, the world by the horns. And, I had dropped out of high school a couple of years earlier and swore to my family that I was going to make it and nothing was going to stop me and watch me do it anyway. And, all this kind of stuff. And, so once I started making some money, some real money, I went out and bought the sports car, and I went out and did this, and my pride and my ego and my character was not prepared to handle the blessing that I'd been given, and very quickly got out of hand. And I'm a big believer that in some cases, I'm a person of faith. So in some cases you call both positive and negative things into your life a little bit by the choices that you make. Yeah. And lo and behold, I met a 5'6", brown hair, brown eyed girl who was going to take me on a roller coaster I will never forget. She grew up in a very difficult home herself, and then had identity issues and all this kind of, I got solely wrapped up in this toxic relationship. Ended up having a pretty serious depression, and then kind of like falling apart and then losing everything. So that losing everything experience was actually a bigger blessing than the gaining everything experience. I mean, it really was. I mean, I learned a lot about myself. I had an embezzlement situation for one of my larger businesses in 2017 where I had to stop all of the personal branding stuff and all the speaking and all the authoring, and had to stop it cold. Yeah. And go back and put my other business back together, not knowing that if I was going to be able to do it or not, so there's been a couple of occasions where I finally understand that while you can enjoy nice things, right, and you can enjoy experiences, you can enjoy trips, it's all fleeting. Right. there's this term that everything is meaningless under the sun. So all this striving and gritty and going after and all this kind of stuff, it never actually brings you fulfillment. But when you can sit down with somebody across the table from you and have a cup of coffee with them, and then you just give them one sentences and you watch their eyes light up. I mean, you literally, all you got to do is watch somebody's eyes. They get super bright, super wide. And sometimes they'll start crying. Sometimes they'll just kind of cry and laugh. It's different. Yeah. It's different. And the contrast between those two experiences has directly correlated into my personal belief system that my life is meant. The reason I'm here on this planet is to create value for the other people that are here on this planet. And let's face it, if we were all creating value for one another on a regular basis, we wouldn't have wars, we wouldn't have famine, we wouldn't have racism, we wouldn't have all this we wouldn't have any of this crap.
Yeah.
Right. But we can't treat people how we want to be treated for some reason. There's something inside of us inherently that I think is negative in that it makes you want to somehow put yourself on a higher pedestal than someone else around you, not realizing that you're actually hurting yourself in the process. And I think it takes losing everything to understand the value of anything.
Yeah. Do you think that you can have great success in life without having that rock bottom moment? Or do you think that is like the one thing?
I think for me, I think the rock bottom moments, or at least what some refer to as the dark night of the soul, I refer to as the crushing, right? I think the crushing gives you a better perspective on the blessing or on the opportunity. You could be born into wealth. You could just be naturally gifted at entrepreneurship and business and be a savant, if you will, with Excel spreadsheets and accounting and Bitcoin this and lithium and all this kind of, and just be like a natural gift at it. But I don't know if you're going to have the substance. Like I just don't know. Like the people I like to surround myself with now are people like yourself that they have depth, right? It's not that they've just done some amazing things, but they have depth. Right. Yeah. They can rattle off and talk about any number of subjects at a deep level. Right. Which then transcends into better beliefs, better perspectives, better understandings, and then better, what I refer to as wisdom. Right. I think you can have a lot of success without the crushing, but you can't have a lot of wisdom without it. That's my personal opinion. No,
I love that. And even just the idea of gratitude, right? Like to have that success later in life after you've gone through those moments and like you call it crushing, right? Like you have a sense of gratitude and understanding like, hey, this is cool to have, but it's not everything. I think it's like, I was fine at the crushing and I'll be fine if it happens again. The whole idea and understanding of like, without the rain, you wouldn't appreciate the sun. Yeah. And I think that's just such a powerful thing to think about. And I don't remember if it was before I hit record or not. That's the fun part about these podcasts.
It's just two brothers talking.
You had mentioned about how the successful people you'd like to surround yourself with are the ones who've been through those rock bottom moments. And then you kind of pause and you're like, I don't know if anybody that I know who's ultra successful hasn't had that story. Right. And it's same. And I think it's because that's who you and I are as people. Like we're super deep. Yep. So we just like to surround ourselves with those people. There's plenty of people who, like you mentioned earlier, are born into it and whatever, we can also relate, you and I, on the live event space, which has been crazy due to COVID and some other things. But at the same time, it's a massively overwhelming undertaking to take on. So tell me a little bit about your live event that we just missed. I was hosting my retreat while you were doing your event, but what made you want to jump into that, and what's your experience been like?
So let me start with the second question first. The number one reason I jumped into it is because I discovered that I had a knack for it. Okay. I have a knack for creating memorable experiences that shift people's identity and perspective and beliefs. And, it's funny, you and I both do this. We try to think about the details from the attendee's perspective. Like when I walk into the building, what am I going to be smelling? What am I going to be feeling? What am I going to be listening to? Who am I going to put on the stage? Are those people sincere? Are they authentic? Are they just there to do a pitch fest? Like what is their thing? Right. And my live event is called Transformational Live. And typically what I'll do is I'll bring in 13 world-class theater leaders from all over the country. And I'll put them on a stage in front of an audience that desperately needs what they need to say, right? Or desperately hear what they're going to say, right? It's not about them talking at an audience. It's them talking into an audience. And I've discovered that the live event space is incredibly fertile ground because it's so immersive. We get so wrapped up month after month, week after week, doing the same old. When you wake up, you go to bed, maybe you pray, maybe you don't, maybe you're eating dinner at the same time every day, but it's so routine that you've got to have something that kind of grabs you and goes, just like shakes you, like, it's just like, wake up, kind of thing. And I've discovered that the live event space specifically has this power of waking people up from slumber, which is why I'm a big believer. I don't just go to live events. Or produce live events. I go to live events because it helps keep me going, keeps me from getting stuck and isolated and all this kind of stuff. And, Transform You Live it's funny. I was even asking the speakers that because we just finished it up and we got testimonials for days, which is beautiful. But I said, you guys tell me in one word what Transform You is. Like, what is Transform You Live in one word? Almost in unison, the vast majority of them said special. Special. I'm like, I was expecting something different, maybe. So now I have to ask you, explain special. And they were like, as the speaker team, right? They're like, this just feels like family. Like, it feels like we're coming to a warm family reunion. And then one of the things that I do is I do a speaker dinner the night before the event. I just take the speakers out and we just break bread, because many of these speakers, while they've been good friends, this is the first time we've done an event together. And I said, well, here's my hope and here's my desire. And then one of the things I always do leading out of the gate is I always go out with one of my most vulnerable stories to the audience, because I want the speakers to know it's okay to do the same thing. And I'm telling you what, between the family atmosphere, the vulnerability, the transparency, and the fact that you got hungry people just looking for a second chance or a first chance, it does. It's something special. And I know you do the same thing with your live events, right? It's just, there's just something special about it. You can't really articulate what happens at a live event other than to say everybody needs to go to some of these events and they need to be completely immersed in it, because you've got to have something that takes you out of the environment that you're in, even if it's only temporary, to put you in an environment where you can soak up so much more, basically the amount of information you can't learn in a decade. Yeah. I mean, you think about the thought leaders that I just had at my live event, the thought leaders you bring in at your live events. It's like you can fast forward yourself, your being, your success, your relationships, your financial picture. You can fast forward yourself a decade. Or you could spend 10 years going, I'm gonna do the same thing every day. Right. I don't know. That's what I love about them anyway.
Yeah, dude. Same. And it's very much the same. And for me, I think the magic, as an event planner and attendee, right? Like I attend them as well. And it's funny because I'll attend them for two reasons. One, for the transformation, but also like, what are they doing? Like, what can I learn? What can I learn here?
What are they doing? A little different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but it's the experience. It's how can you create an experience that's guaranteed to shift somebody internally? And like you said, I mean, there's so much information at these live events that you can become overwhelmed. And what I always like to say to people is like, take one thing and implement it. Like, don't allow this moment or this event to scare you. Because I think sometimes when you get infused with all this content, you're like, oh my God, what do I do? And then you do nothing. And it's really, like you said, it's creating that experience for individuals and being able to bring our friends together who happen to be thought leaders to share their wisdom with every single person in attendance. What's the future for your events and everything? I know you do some other things as well, but what's the future for the event?
Well, a couple different things. First of all, I pulled my phone out for just a second, which I don't be doing when we're doing a show together, but I had this interesting statement. So I had one of the attendees, her name is Ashley. And I said, Ashley, I'm really having a hard time with my messaging, letting people know what this event is and how it's so powerful. And this is we're into day 2 now, right? So there's already been tears. There's already been laughter. There's already been shifts. There's already been families put back together. Like all these cool things, right, have already happened. And I said, help me with my messaging. Let me see here. What did she say? This is what she says. What I think was different than most conferences was you actually gave tangible steps, not just hyped up motivation. Therefore, the only thing that came to my mind to sum up the whole event was this quote, where transformation is inevitable. It's not profound, but it's simple. right? So I think
I love that.
what I want to do is I want to continue to create, amplify, and constantly elevate the live events, the Transform live event systems, all of that, where transformation is not optional but inevitable, right? And the way you do that is you have to go back to the audience and the attendees and say, okay, tell me about your shift. Like, tell me about you. And that's the coolest experience, is to go back and do that. So I think a couple different things. So I was telling you, I think off air or when we were hanging out last time, but we've got Transform You Live that we'll do once a year. And that's when I bring 13 thought leaders from all over the country. We're going to be adding a one-to-one coaching aspect to that with the thought leaders. They're already down with it. They're totally cool with it. They're like, yeah, I'll definitely spend one-on-one time with somebody. So we're going to be adding that to Transform You Live, but we're also going to be launching Transform You Acceleration. Now, Transform You Acceleration is a little bit different. We'll probably do that mid-year next year. Transform You Acceleration is the Transform You Life Mastery System. It's basically the curriculum that I built that took me from homelessness to where I'm at today. Right. We'll cover everything from identity to fear to beliefs to tangible. One of the things that I shared that the audience seemed to enjoy is this concept called the 7 levels of life mastery. Right. And it's so you can understand where you are on the journey, so you don't give up when you're smack dab about to get to the emergence phase. Right.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to do 2 things. We're going to do the event that is inspirational, motivational, all that kind of stuff in nature with practical steps like what Ashley was just talking about. And then we're going to go a step further, right? During Transform You Acceleration, we're going to start breaking things down in detail. So it's like, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3, this is step 4, and so on and so forth. And the reason we're going to do that is because everybody comes in with a different starting point. It's one of the reasons why in the personal development space, it's so difficult to put on an event that actually touches the lives of everybody in the room, is because everybody's coming in with a different need and a different starting point.
Right.
However, the framework that you use to shift from that starting point can be very methodical, very detailed, and very strategic. So I think one event's going to be like the awakening kind of concept, and the other event's going to be like, okay, here's how we do it. Let's roll. So that's what's next for us in the live event space.
No, that's exciting, man. I love it. So I have to know, obviously, knowing where you came from and the businesses that you've built, what bit you in the self-development space? So where were you when you got introduced to it all?
Well, so I mentioned Steve before, so I think he introduced it to me from the get-go. Now, it's a little bit different for me. He would pull me down off my dad's framing crew and he'd pop me in his Jeep Grand Cherokee, and we'd ride around, and he would tell me everything about real estate and not to drink. And this is how you flip this, and this is how you flip that. And this is what, most of which didn't really stick, right? Well, it didn't stick immediately anyway. It's like kind of went in there and kind of stayed in the memory bank for a while. But I'll tell you, the most transformational experience I had was actually, I'd been in business for about, probably 10 years, maybe 12 years, 10, 12 years. In fact, it was 2011. And in 2011, it's funny. I had people working, quote unquote, I say with me nowadays, but for me at the time is what kind of puts it, that were my vice president, my C-suite professionals. And many of them had more ABCs and EFGs behind their name than I could even think of. And here I was, the high school dropout, kind of like, kid who's just been gritty and tenacious. But they didn't know that. Yeah. They didn't know anything about my story whatsoever. They just thought I was a douchebag running around the office barking at people. They didn't know of course I didn't really know at the time that I was operating out of fear, right? Fear and insecurity. I can't let them find out how much I don't know or whatever.
Right.
And I would go home and I would go into my closet. I know it's kind of strange, but it's peaceful and quiet there, right? The dogs can't find you there, right? Spouse can't find you there typically, and kind of thing. And you kind of go, and I'll go in, and I went in there and prayed. And on this particular day, I had a really tough day where my leadership team was really pushing back at me as a group. And I felt like I was being outnumbered, like I was kind of being talked at rather than talked to. And I went in to sit down and pray, and I began to pray. And I'm like, I don't understand, Lord, please help me. Please help me. Like, I know I got to change. I just don't know how to change the things that they're telling me I need to change. Like, I have no idea how to do it. And the next morning, my controller at the time came in and said, "Hey, look, there's this 1-day conference coming here to Raleigh. This guy here, he does this whole program about money, and he's now doing this business thing. and I like him. I listen to him on the radio every day. I think you should check him out. So, okay, cool. So I do. I take myself and my C-suite professional team, and we go up, 5 or 6 of us go up there. And I think within the first 30, 45 minutes of the keynote, I literally got up crying and walked back to the back room, said, what are you selling? I'm buying it, whatever this thing is. I'm dead serious. I was probably the easiest sell they've ever made to date. I was also the poster child for a number of years. But I went there, signed up. I went to the 5-day or 4-day version of that event in November of that year. And here's where the transformation stuff happened. He came straight out of the gate. First of all, he's like going around the audience. Okay, give me a 1-word answer. Give me 1 word for becoming a leader. Humble. Okay, great. Give me 1-word answer for becoming a leader. And he went around the room and he built this entire list of character qualities of what a leader should be. And then he made this comment and he says, if you're going to be a leader, that better be you. And I looked at that list and I had 3 of 15 items.
Wow.
And I remember weeping, knowing that I needed to get better. But again, I wasn't really sure how. And maybe that's why I love the live event space so much, because over the next 4 days after that, that was my teardown moment, my breakdown moment. But the next 4 days after that, I literally left there with courage and conviction and confidence. It's and then I got back to Raleigh and I went back to my team. I pulled in my entire team and I basically spent 3 hours telling them how much of a doofus I had been. And I told them the story. I said, guys, I started this company when I was homeless. I was at the time I was sleeping in a borrowed friend's car. That was the first shelter I'd had in a while. I got the equipment out of the trash piles. I literally built the equipment out of the trash piles with my dad. And, at the time, this particular business was probably a $20-25 million business, right? It wasn't like it was chump change. We had done some work.
Yeah.
And it was funny. And I wept and I understood the power of vulnerability and transparency by talking to my team, and they wept with me. Right. And then they were at least willing to give me the opportunity to grow. And it's not like I was perfect straight out of the gate. I mean, for another 6 months, I was still stumbling over the top of myself because I'm learning a new behavior, right? I'm trying to operate from a new belief set. But I think that was probably the most transformational moment. And that's when I really bought in hardcore into personal development. What do I need to know today to make me better tomorrow? Period. And since then, I do one thing every single day that is growing my mind, my body, or my soul. I actually break my particular 7 days up into specific categories. Like Mondays is financial, Tuesdays is spiritual, Wednesdays is emotional. And I do that to keep me kind of well-rounded.
Sure.
But the hunger came from that, again, that crushing, right? You don't, what is that? You don't get wine out of olives or I'm sorry, grapes, right? You don't get oil out of olives. There we go. That was the right one. So the crushing is necessary. I don't know. That's my most transformational moments came after the crushing every time.
Dude, I love it. I love it. So one thing I'm curious of, obviously you kind of alluded to the daily practices you might have, but it's a question I ask every single person because I have the opportunity to interview some of the most successful people in the world, however you want to define success. So my question for you is 2 parts. First part is, what's your definition of success? The second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Yeah. So my definition of success now is create more success around me. Do more every single day to create success behaviors and success principles and outcomes for those that surround me. So when I walk in, I have to give you an example. We had a young lady that eventually became my daughter. Okay. So she was a single waitress who was pregnant when I first met her, 19 years old. And through a weird set of events, she literally became my wife and I's daughter. And I'll never forget this because I took it for granted. She told me one time that no one in her family had ever owned a home. The background wise, nobody had ever owned a home. They'd always been renters and she said one day, I said, well, what's your biggest dream? This is 6 or 7 years ago. What's your biggest dream? I want to own a home. Okay, cool. Let's work on that. Here's how we lay it out. We started strategizing and stuff like that. And of course there were lots of ups and downs and stuff along the way. But 2 years ago, she bought our first home.
That's awesome.
She put down the deposit by herself. She was out of debt, the whole deal. And the reason I kind of use that as an example is because I know that I played a role in that. right? So by creating success for her, I create success for future generations. If I'm so focused on my success, for example, I've got he's a friend, but he's also silly. And this is something he and I have been trying to talk about off and on for a number of years. I'm like, dude, stop going on Instagram and putting $1 million on the cash on the table. Stop doing that. Like you're sending the wrong damn signal. Everybody knows you're wealthy. Like everybody knows it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to flex. Like everybody knows it. Right. You're teaching these knuckleheaded kids that are following you that this is what success is, rather than, you take Tony Robbins, for example, who's been feeding people for as long as I can remember as part of his programs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like take care, like do something good to take care of somebody who can't take care of themselves right now. That's my definition of success. As far as the top 3 things that I do, every day starts with prayer and meditation every single day. Something I'm working on. I'm still not super gifted at it right now, but I'm working on it, is to listen more than I speak when I'm doing that. Right. A lot of my best ideas and innovations and revelations, if you will, come in those seasons, and I'm trying to quiet myself. So that's number 1. Number 2 is never discount an opportunity. Always invest in it, look at it, hit it from as many different perspectives, but don't necessarily dismiss it. Right. It's really easy for our biases to say, don't take advantage. Don't do that. That'll never take off, said the iPhone. Oh, that'll never take off, said the IBM computer. Like the computer, like if you remember, I mean, seriously, when they started talking about having the personal home computer, right? They were like, oh, that'll never take off because, computers took entire rooms, right, to function. Right.
Yeah.
So I think part of becoming successful is never discounting an idea until you've taken the time to really dive into it and see if it's viable. Right. And then the other thing that I do is I have this three little 3-piece framework that I use in business, right? Specifically, I probably use it in personal life too, but mainly in business. And it's I test it, I invest in it, and then I scale it. I never try to go from test to scale, because if I go to try to test from scale, I'm always going to lose money.
Yeah. I'm
always going to burn up opportunities. I may damage some relationships. If you're going to be truly successful, you've got to understand, you got to play the long game. Right. Like I'm still in one of my businesses right now. I'm still investing heavily. Right. It hasn't actually produced any real profit yet.
Sure.
But I'm not necessarily trying to generate the profit. I'm trying to generate the impact that will then generate the profit. Right. So it's the long game scenario. So those are some of the things that I'm currently using.
No, dude, I love all that stuff. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? Where do they follow you? What's all the good stuff?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. So that's Stephen with a PH_Scoggins. As far as like to find out more and maybe check out all the other channels, it's just stevenscoggins.com. That's probably the easiest way.
Awesome, man. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth. You're asking a guy who has a life like Forrest Gump. Oh man. My biggest moment to date is understanding that family is just as important as business, if not more important.
I love it, man.
So I see a lot of very successful entrepreneurs that have very successful businesses, but they have very broken children and families.
Yeah. I hear that, man. I see it all the time as well, dude. Stephen, thank you so much for, coming on and sharing your wisdom, but more importantly, sharing your gifts with the world. Coming from a man who knows how difficult it is to run an event and put your heart and soul into it and take the risk and do all that stuff, man. Thank you so much for being you. Dude, I always enjoy to hang out with you, man. Anytime. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.